Every year, Georgia has a delayed harvest trout season that runs from November 1st to May 14th, and it's a great time for anglers of all experience levels to hit the water. I sit down with my buddy Tad Murdock of Georgia Wild Trout to give everyone a general overview of the 5 delayed harvest streams in Georgia. Check it out. Smith Creek, that's the first stream we've got that we're going to talk about. So what do we need to know about Smith Creek? Where's it at?
So Smith Creek is in Helen, just above the town in Unicoi State Park. Smith will fish a little bit differently throughout the seasons. Beginning of the year in the fall, you might actually see some insect catches with some caddis and midges will be very popular. At the beginning of the year, it'll be stocked top to bottom pretty good. They spread the fish out pretty well at the beginning. As the year goes on, that tends to shift a little bit northward with a couple stragglers, left down at the bottom where, the intrepid, walking angler can go find them. In terms of how to fish it, the first couple weeks after they stock, it'll be pretty easy. They'll buy, a wide variety of things. As it gets going, they're going to get more and more tight-lipped. The bites will be quicker. You really got to pay attention to what you're doing, get a really good drift in there. Occasionally, first thing in the morning, you can get some dumb fish to come out and, just hungry, forgot what a fly looked like for some reason. If you get there after 10 a.m., you're going to be grinding for some fish. What
does the creek actually look like? Are we talking about a wide creek? Is it more narrow?
So smaller water, maybe, anywhere from 10 to 20 feet wide, just depending on where you're at. Not very deep, if you're a wading angler, you don't ever need to get deeper than your knee. There might be some holes that are waist deep, but if you're standing out in that, you're not catching any fish anyway.
Okay, and how long is this entire section of this delayed harvest?
Ooh, it might be, my guess would be 3, maybe 4 miles.
Oh, okay,
long.
that long?
Yeah, you can walk down a pretty good ways. Get in the woods, get away from other anglers. You'll find maybe more active fish, but much less fish.
Okay. Are we talking all 3 species of trout in Georgia, or what's the predominant one we're going to go after there?
They have and will stock all 3 species. Normally, it's just going to be rainbows. 90% rainbows. If you're there maybe beginning of the year, there might be some straggler browns and some brooks that they stock in there. But for the most part, we're looking at rainbows.
Okay, so let's talk about when it gets tough. Because you said right there at the beginning, probably a little bit of anything, but let's say when it really gets tough, give me a couple of fly selections that we want to try to concentrate on.
So you want to go smaller, lighter. So, a size 20 zebra midge will do very well. Again, tough to see, and they will eat it and spit it before your dry fly even goes down. So you got to be watching what those fish were doing. Did it just sway 6 inches to the left and maybe you saw a little wide of the mouth open? That's all you need. Set the hook. You'll catch 10 times more fish that way than waiting for a bobber, a dry fly, anything like that to go down.
That makes sense. As far as casting there, is it a lot of overhead canopy? What are we doing there?
Absolutely. If you're doing the back and forth fly cast, you're going to donate more flies to the trees, which is, I'm welcoming. I usually load up on a few $100s worth of flies and bobbers, every year out there.
After you go behind people and everything?
It's a great place. If you're just a bargain hunter, man, no need to go to a fly shop. Just bring a little extendable saw and start cutting branches down, and you'll come away with a few $100s worth of flies.
All right. So this creek, I would say, is when you get on walking on up, is more for the more experienced kind of roll casters. You got to be careful there.
I wouldn't even call it experienced anglers. I would just call it, more slow and methodical, right?
Okay.
If you kind of use that more common sense, keep your tighter cast, you don't necessarily have to be good. You're just not doing you're not being reckless with your cast.
And the speed of the stream on the water here.
Man, that can change it. There's some places where it's really slow water. There's some places where it can pick up pretty quick, and fish will hang in either, or around either, especially depending on the conditions. One of the other great things about Smith Creek is when we get rains in the wintertime and even the spring, Smith Creek is the least affected. So it can rain hard as can be.
Right.
You can fish it when it's high. You can fish it, a day later. It's going to be still, you have a shot at still catching fish, whereas some of our other ones, they're done.
Okay, that makes sense. And Unicoi State Park is the starting point.
Yes, yep, right below the lake. I mean, you can fish the dam of the lake right below the spillway all the way, down that 3 or 4 mile, hike there.
All right.
The other thing with we mentioned this spinning gear and all that for those guys. For those, at the beginning of the stocking period, you're going to catch fish. After that first week, they've seen every rooster tail, trout magnet, all that junk, really early on. If you want to be effective during those times, it's time to cover water. Fish those, spots that nobody fishes. That's where you're going to find some aggressive fish that haven't seen lures before,
right,
or in a while. And you're going to get those hits off the spinning gear, when the fish are really biting those tiny, the tiny bugs that you're not going to be able to throw on a spinning rod for them.
Okay. Makes total sense. All right, let's move to the next one, Amicalola Creek. And that's right here in Dawson County. That's on the Dawson Forest Wildlife Management Area.
Yep.
I do know that is from Highway 53 up to Steel Bridge.
Yes.
That's the entire section. I don't know if it's a couple miles via river, really how long, but that's the area. Steel Bridge down to Highway 53.
Yes. Yeah, I've never walked it top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I fished the whole thing, but just approaching from different angles.
Yeah. So this is a little bit bigger than Smith Creek.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely a little bit bigger water. And it kind of fishes like two different places altogether. So you got the bottom section, which is going to have some deeper pools, slower water, and some faster, water where there's some chutes and all that.
Is this on Highway 53? Is this the Highway 53 side?
Yes, this is the 53 side, the south side.
Right.
So from there, it's a little bit more dangerous. First thing you need to know about it is tougher wading on that south end. If you're getting in the water, be careful. There's a lot of those ledge rocks where you're 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet.
Yeah.
You're dropping off. So be careful there. Slicker rocks. And in places heavier current if you are trying to cross the creek as well. So, be mindful of wading. If it's high water or anything like that, just avoid it.
Just avoid it.
Yeah. And then, low water, especially in the fall into early winter, you're pretty good, walking on either.
And this is on the south end.
That's on the south end.
Okay. The north end, you said it was easier?
Yes. North end. So in the north end, you've got one big deep pool right there below the Iron Bridge.
Okay.
It's going to fish well for a week. If you're very lucky, maybe 2 weeks after they stock. After that, the fish tend to disappear.
Okay.
But then below that large pool, there's larger, shallower runs. And those runs will be a little more conducive to especially beginner fly anglers. You can see the fish a little bit better and kind of stalk them, ambush them, make your better cast there.
Okay, since we're on the north end right now, let's go ahead. What are some of the fly selections that we're going to try for this area?
The flies, we're going to see a similar pattern here with all the DHs earlier when they stock. Anything's on the table. Usually the bigger, flashier stuff will gather more attention, and that'll be the easier patterns to use. Once we get towards that week 3 and 4, before they stock again, after they haven't stocked for a while, those fish are going to be back to the small stuff. We're going to be a little more finesse there. Another good way to approach that top end, if you're unfamiliar with the creek, never fished it before, just want to cover a lot of water, just a woolly bugger.
Okay.
Strip through the water. You can't really fish it wrong, just cover a lot of water, and you might get more follows than you do eats, but you'll start to learn where those fish are setting up. Then you can come back through those same areas, same locations with your nymphs, your dry dropper rigs, and do a little bit better there.
Okay, so give me kind of, for those that don't know, a size of the river, like across. What are we looking at right here?
I'd guess 20 to 30 feet throughout most of Amicalola there, maybe a little bit wider in some places.
Average depth, just guess. Or I guess it depends on where you're at.
Changes north or south. Right. Average depth below that large pool on the north end is, knee high, thigh high on the deepest end, shallower than that. And then on the bottom, it's hard to get an average depth just because there's some holes that are 10 feet deep, and then there's some runs that are, knee to waist high. On the shallower side there. So
okay, on the south side, you're talking about the woolly bugger and things on the north side. Same things in play on the south?
Yeah, you can. It's so even if they're within 3 days of them stocking, they'll still eat anything. But I feel like those fish on the bottom end learn what the natural foods are a little bit quicker.
Okay.
So they'll get dialed into that smaller food is really the only thing available to them in, big numbers there.
Right.
So I feel like they shift over to that diet a little bit quicker. Another subtle tip for the south end of Amicalola, there's a family of otters down there. And they will torment those fish first thing in the morning. So, a lot of people want to get out there first thing in the morning, and it's not necessarily great just because those otters have spent the entire morning just punishing those trout or, mixing them around. By about midday, those fish get a little bit more relaxed, and they'll start feeding again, without worrying about, the otters being around and all that.
Okay, so if you could pick one fly on the south end that you like to throw, or pattern, whatever.
It would either be the egg or the zebra midge.
Egg or zebra midge.
Just depending on, what week you fall on that spectrum between when they stock and either how long those fish have been in there or, what the food availability looks like. Either of those patterns will do well on a given day.
Are we talking rainbows specifically, or rainbows, browns? What's our options there?
I think I've only seen rainbows there.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing a brown or a brook trout out there.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. All right. Now let's move to a little bit larger, I think, body of water, the Toccoa River.
Yes.
All right. So we're talking about the coming into Lake Blue Ridge.
Yeah. Above Blue Ridge, Shalford Bridge.
Okay.
In north.
What are we looking at there? Yeah.
There only a couple parts of it, the more towards that south end, the Shalford Bridge, are easily wadeable in the fall months. So it is a great fishery, great opportunity from when it begins in November until we get those first heavy rains late December, early January. It can fish really well. More welcoming to all anglers. You can wade out there, fish the various shoals that wind around a couple little islands there. Fish as well. Then once we get those rains, it becomes dangerous again with higher water. If you're unfamiliar with the rock outcroppings and just how the bottom contour is, you can fall off into deep water or quick water very quickly. So wading certainly becomes a problem there. And then by the spring months, when it's rained a good bit, it's not really.
Might as well go somewhere else.
Yeah. There's better options. The 10 to 14 inch stockers aren't worth, getting hurt or worse.
Yeah, you said, okay, so from Shalford Bridge up to Sandy Bottom put in.
Yeah.
About how long is that?
Ooh,
maybe a couple miles?
Yeah, it's a few miles.
Okay.
The stretch was made for, you can boat it, especially once that water comes up. If you've got a kayak or drift boat or something like that, you can go up and down it pretty easily. And I think that was the original intent. But the user group that actually does that is very small. So if you do have access to stuff like that, maybe a good opportunity once that water comes up in the spring. But for wading anglers, those earlier months are going to be the way to go.
Okay, and so what species are we looking at there?
There you could probably find all three.
Okay.
Given the time of year, rainbows, of course, are going to be more predominant. Browns are going to be running in and out, depend on what time of year they're there. Especially the holdover browns, maybe even some wild browns. They're probably going to be a little bit absent in the fall unless they're stocked. But they'll start showing back up midwinter, early spring, just coming back down the Toccoa there.
Okay, and so let's go over a few patterns to target these fish on this section of water.
So there, I like the junk patterns more.
When you say junk pattern, what are you talking about?
Your mop jigs, your eggs, worms, something to catch their eye. It's a little bit, because it's a little bit bigger water, you can spread out. There's fewer anglers throughout the stretch of it, so they don't see as many flies as some of these smaller delayed harvest, Amicalola, Smith Creek, a little bit smaller, lot more angler traffic. The Toccoa gets a little bit less just because it's a little less wade friendly for the most part, and a little bit further away from Metro Atlanta and all that stuff.
Exactly.
But yeah, the junk patterns do well, and then you can switch over to more naturals. If they do happen to get a little bit smart, pheasant tails, caddis nymphs, stuff like that. Dry fly bite can happen. It's a little less common. You got to kind of feel out the conditions when you're there. You see them start to rise,
Yeah.
You know, maybe throw, you know, caddis in the fall, blue wing olives in those colder months, you know, from late November through February. You might have a blue wing olive hatch, and then midges, of course, if you're in this more sluggish water.
Okay, all right. All right, so the next one on our list is Chattooga River.
Yep.
And this is on the border of South Carolina and Georgia, up in Rayburn County, right? Correct?
Yeah, up in, I think it's Rabun County.
Is it Rayburn? I said
Yep.
Rayburn?
Yep.
Rayburn County?
Yep.
So this is an interesting one because it's kind of, and the reason I kind of put them this way is the Toccoa, I think, is a little wider. And, of course, Smith and Amicalola are the smaller ones. This kind of fits in right between those. So it's kind of like mid-sized stream, or what would you say?
Man, I would actually say it's larger. It's probably the same size as the Toccoa.
Really?
Maybe a little bit bigger. In
Okay.
parts.
All right.
It's the best one if you have the time. So it's a little more tucked away. It's going to take you a little more drive time.
Right.
But it fishes better than all the other ones consistently. It starts on the south end at the 28 Highway 28 right there, and then we'll go up a few miles to it ends at a creek. I'm blanking on the name of the creek.
Right, but it's upstream.
Yeah, it's a good ways up. It'd be a good hike. But now if you do make that hike to the top end, they don't just stop at the top end of it. There's fish up, and very few people fish those because it's a nice hike. There's not a road that, you know, really dumps off right to it.
Got to make a walk.
So yes, yeah. So don't think that the good fishing stops right where the delayed harvest stops. It'll go above there, you know, just because very few people come all the way down there to fish and keep fish. Right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, you can find the occasional hatch out there, maybe more so than the other delayed harvests. All three species
That's what I was going
will
to
be
ask, all of
around.
them there.
You can even find some rogue holdover browns that come in, you know, pretty good sizes out there.
Okay. What's the canopy like on this one? Since you said it's a little bit bigger, is this more for your casting guys?
Unless you're by the bank.
Yeah.
You know, if you're by the bank, you might have some canopy, some bushes overhanging a little bit, but for the most part, it's wide enough to where you're not tight, you're not limited on space, you're kind of wide open there. Now, with that said, you know, it's a good place to learn how to break down bigger water, maybe longer seams and all that. Learn your approach, you know, to some of those bigger holes. It's like I said, it's different than the small water. Small water, you can break apart. You know, it's a 15-foot long pool or run.
Right.
You can fish that easy. Now we're talking 30-foot runs, and you got to break it down into subsections. So, you know, learning how to break down that kind of water is helpful.
Okay. What baits are we using here?
Man, bring them all. You never know.
Really?
Yeah. So at the beginning of the season when they start stocking, again, those eye-catchy baits are going to do a little bit better. They'll switch over to the naturals pretty quickly out there, whether it just be, you know, again, your small caddis, small mayfly patterns.
Right.
You know, and then even the intermediate there, like the patch rubber legs, bigger, eye-catchier, but still natural.
Right.
So stuff like that, big stonefly patterns, maybe turn a couple more heads, you know, throughout the year. But yeah, that'd be a cool play. If you have extra time, you know, to make that drive and got a full day, you know, worth going out there. And then, like I said, in the evenings, morning, you might see a hatch, and, you know, that doesn't happen down here as much.
Right.
And you can break those down a little bit more.
Okay, all right. Then next we got the Chattahoochee River, which this is not by the Beaufort Dam. We're talking down in Atlanta almost.
Yes, yeah, right there by 285.
Okay.
It is bigger, certainly bigger water.
Certainly.
The toughest part about the Chattahoochee down there is when we get rains and the dam releases. Because it's so far below, you know, both the Morgan Falls Dam and, you know, the Beaufort Dam.
Beaufort Dam, yeah.
They're seeing it takes a lot longer for that water to drop back down to normal pool. Once we get into that winter schedule where they're just generating in the mornings, it becomes a little bit more predictable when you have time to fish. You know, you can fish the mornings there. The afternoons are usually when that flood pulse comes through when you get down towards Atlanta.
Right.
And then on top of that, when winter comes along, we get those winter rains, spring rains. The water stays dirty a lot longer down there. So one, tougher for wading when you're knee deep and you can't see the bottom. You don't know, whether there's a trip hazard, and stuff like that. It just kind of blows it out. But, if conditions are good, hasn't rained in, a few days, they're not not at a generating time. Great fishing. You can throw the junk fly patterns are pretty good. The midges and occasionally even some caddis will come down there pretty regularly. And they'll get keyed in on those and they'll fish well.
So, of all the ones we've talked about so far, the one you mentioned, the otters at Amicalola Creek, but there's no natural predators. Now, in the Chattahoochee, we got a little bit different problem because we have a thing called a striper.
Yes. So, some people say that's a bad thing. I kind of see it as another opportunity. So, and they're not going to be there much in the early season, fall through, we'll call it midwinter.
Yeah.
Once spring rolls around, those striper will really start pushing up. And, maybe don't bring it with you on the water, but in your truck, keep a larger rod with, some streamers intact. And on those days you're chasing, you might, run away with the jackpot if you're able to go grab that and make some casts for some, monster stripers.
Some monster stripers. Now, how big is this section? I know it's from 285 Bridge and then up. It's not a very long one.
Soap Creek.
Soap Creek.
Yeah, down to I think it goes a little bit south of 285.
Okay.
But that Soap Creek area is typically a little bit more productive and fishing just below it. Little shoals out there, easier to wade, and they'll get in each of those.
And I would definitely say by the size, any kind of casting you want to try to do.
Yeah.
It's so big.
Let it rip.
If you want to do the river runs through it casting, it's there.
If you're good enough and you want to try it, do that. But, just in fly fishing in general, the more you can stock the fish and get a little bit closer to them, the better your odds are, with less line to hook up, land them, all that stuff. 50-foot cast is a long hook set and a long way to stripping a fly.
For sure.
Fish.
Now, these are the 5 that have been a delayed harvest for a while.
Yes.
We're going to get into 2 new ones, but on these, how often do they stock throughout the delayed harvest?
It's about once a month, once every 4 weeks.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, whether the DNR says one or the other, that's the pattern they typically
do. The rules of delayed harvest.
Yep. So all catch and release, all artificial lures.
Mm-hmm. It's a single hook, right? No trebles?
Oh, man.
I want to say it's no treble hooks. I'm not 100% sure of that. I do know it's no live bait, no power bait, anything like that.
I guess it's because, fly anglers can't have 2 flies, 3 flies on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
We'll have to look on the hook thing and just say, check your regulations.
Check that. I know I find plenty of treble hooks in the trees. So, like I said, that one's, as long as, you don't really need a treble hook down there anyway. If they're going to bite, they're going to bite. You're not getting any, extra, at least that many extra fish.
Right.
On that. And if the goal is to release them anyway,
for sure.
And
that's the main purpose of the delayed harvest is to give guys time on the water without the big, huge crowds in the summer. And
it's a relief on the DNR from not having to stock 100 creeks. There's, we're down to, we're 5, now 7.
Right.
To spread out the angling a little bit more and gives, people and beginners an opportunity to get out there when, there's not as much traffic.
Okay.
And do some fishing.
All right, so 2 new ones are being added this year by the Georgia DNR. Waters Creek. Now, first of all, where is that located?
So Waters Creek is a tributary of Dix Creek and eventually the Chattooga River there above Dahlonega.
Okay.
Smaller water. We're thinking Smith Creek size, maybe even smaller.
Oh, okay.
Once upon a time, it was managed as a trophy trout stream, much like all the other trophy trout public streams in Georgia. They were poached to death.
Yeah.
It's been pretty barren, minus some shiners and the occasional wild rainbow. It's been pretty empty for the past few years. So it's exciting to see them. It's a cold water stream still, so it could have trout year round. So it's exciting for it to get stocked again, see where those trout spread out to. My only maybe skepticism of it is, especially this year when the water's super low, I don't know how far or how much cover those trout have to go,
Right.
Maybe more so than the local poachers are. The herons are going to have some easy pickings if they figure out there's trout in that tiny creek.
That's right. It's not always humans that do the poaching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was Smith Creek and Helen. You've got eagle, otters, herons. They're all there for, free meal for those first few months.
How big of a section is this?
The creek's 4 or 5 miles long.
So it's the entire creek, you think, maybe?
I would assume the entire creek. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, and eventually it's going to get too skinny for some of those fish to, hold in. So, that it's limited by that, not by, area.
Okay. Well, it's still cool that they're bringing the fish back to this section. So,
and what's going to be interesting about it is there's one easy place for them to stock. I'm curious how they spread the fish out in it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how that's handled.
Right.
There's a road that goes down most of it. For the past few years, you haven't been able to drive down the road. Certainly all right to walk down it.
Right.
But I don't know if they open that up with the delayed harvest. I kind of hope not. Just, make some people walk a little bit. Yeah, exactly. But yes, so there's going to be a few easy areas where, they're going to fit more numbers of fish are going to hold up. But hopefully some get upstream once we start getting some rains and really spread out, and that'll be it should be a really good fishery for small water stuff.
And probably just rainbows here, you would think?
They could do all three because it's cold water year round. I wouldn't be surprised if they do all three. The other thing I've kind of noticed, the delayed harvests that are closer to the hatcheries, especially the one in Clayton and the one in Blue Ridge, are more apt to get stocked with the browns and the brooks.
Really?
So maybe just circumstantial evidence, but that's the only ones I've seen. I don't know if there's any method to it or not, but the more southerly ones are rainbows. So
makes sense to me. All right, now we got the last one that's being added this year is Raccoon Creek.
Yes,
I know nothing about this one. It's in Paulding County, right?
Yeah, Paulding County, right by Silver Comet Trail.
Okay.
Bit of an odd choice. I'm not sure why they chose this one, other than it's not close to the other ones.
Right. This is definitely a seasonal thing, right? This creek.
Yeah. More seasonal. In the summer, it is going to get hot. It can go a little bit longer than some of the other ones, like Amicalola or So.
Right.
But it's a little bit silty. It's not going to be your clean rock bottom throughout the most of it. It kind of size wise, you're looking Smith Creek, maybe a little bit bigger. So still smaller water, but a little bit larger than waters in Smith Creek.
Okay. And so probably rainbows in this, I would say, because that's just a pure stocking thing.
Yeah, I'd go with rainbows.
Never been on it, but what kind of canopy? Were we tight again, like Smith Creek? We're talking about we're going to be doing roll cast, something smaller.
A couple spots open up. For the most part, you're going to have some shoreline cover, overhanging trees and all that stuff. So kind of tight. Like I said, a few of the holes in there, you can fish from one side of the creek and not have to worry about any of that. I would assume those are going to be the busier spots because it's also one of the ones where they stock it.
Yeah.
So
Waters Creek and Raccoon Creek, what kind of patterns are we looking at for these? Let's take Waters again.
I would, for both of them, I would default to the junk fly.
The junk fly.
Yeah, the junk fly. Your mops, eggs, worms are going to catch the most eyes, maybe throughout the year. Raccoon, we'll see more of the midges. There's some slower water in there, so they're going to have a little bit of more of that hatching going on. Waters can be wide open though. There's going to be some mayfly hatches going on up there, caddis, in different parts of the season. And I'm going this based off it happens on Dix Creek.
Okay. Yeah.
There's just a little more bug life, a little more diversity of bug life than something as far south as Raccoon.
Okay.
And then also with waters, you can do different things, and it's shallow water, so it's going to be probably all dry dropper. There's no reason to throw an indicator out there. It's 2 feet deep, in some of the deeper holes.
Right.
So,
some of the deeper holes.
Yeah. A bobber is just going to scare fish, especially, as they've been in there longer. That splat of it landing is going to send them off. So dry dropper is probably going to be the easy way to go there. And what's going to be huge in waters is stalking the fish, right? You won't be able to trudge through it. You won't be able to get, within eye shot of the fish before they spook, especially as they've been in there for a while. They're going to be spooky with the herons probably. So, more stealth right there. If you see something that looks shin deep, especially if it's an undercut bank or a log, I would guess there's probably going to be a held over fish by it, and you'll just need to drift a fly.
Okay. All right. If you were ranking these,
yep,
top to bottom, from favorite down, just give me your top 2 favorites.
So the best one fishing wise, the Chattooga still.
Chattooga.
It's kind of doubly stocked because South Carolina stocks it too.
Okay. There you go.
So and then it gets a fraction of the most pressure
because it's so far away.
But it's a little bit further away.
Yeah. What's your next one?
So and we have to put that, accessibility in getting there, makes it easy. Amicalola is a good one, much closer to town, especially if you're in Metro Atlanta. It's going to be your closest one. Easy to get to as long as it hasn't rained in the last 3 days. It's going to be good raining.
It does blow out really easy.
It will blow out very fast, and it takes it a decent while to clear up, especially in the spring. Because once the water's already high, once we get more rain on top of that, it just takes a while. In the fall, it tends to wash out a little bit quicker.
Okay.
But so I'd go there. Then Smith Creek, easier for beginners if you go slow. Just slow down. Don't put those donations in the trees. Fish it methodically. And if you're there, on your first few times, cover water. Right. Like I said, you can find some of those more aggressive fish by moving around a good bit, especially further down. There's a lot of people that don't want to walk down even the slightest. So getting in some of those, untouched places might land you some more fish.
So delayed harvest runs from November 1st this year to about May 15th, give or take a day on the back end.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the best time throughout that whole period to hit one of these streams?
For all of them in general.
Just all of them in general.
November.
November.
Like I said, right
at the beginning.
Right at the beginning. They're going to fish the best. There's probably last year and 3 years ago, there was good caddis hatches, which we don't see a lot of, and it had those fish keyed in on natural, food a little bit quicker. So it was more fun to fish from a fly fishing perspective.
Okay. The hardest of these, like if somebody was a new fly angler, which one would you rank as the hardest to fish as far as skill? Not so much even, well, you can put casting in, but also wading.
So the Toccoa easy the first half. After, like I said, I wouldn't even wait it. It's not worth the time.
Yeah.
The Toccoa can be easy in the fall, and then that switches over to
harder.
Difficult. Why bother? After that water goes up.
Right.
The Chattahoochee is another one where it's
just
tough weight.
And water.
Yeah, if that water gets dirty because the releases or the rains, it gets a little bit tougher. With that said, if you can find fish after those periods, so think about those periods after we get rain on the Chattahoochee River, no one's really out there. Those fish haven't seen food in a week or two.
Yeah.
If you're out there right after those, it's like they just stocked them.
It's all timing.
Yes, and that's why I was saying more out there. You can throw the junk patterns more often, and they'll eat them versus if they're in there getting beat up every day like they do on Smith Creek, Amicalola. Little bit easier to catch in general when the conditions are right.
Right. So I know a lot of experienced fly anglers come out to this delayed harvest, of course, because there's no crowds, time of year, and stocking. But advice for a beginner, and again, a broad stroke across all of them. If you could give a couple of tips for a beginner to kind of have some success.
So for beginners, go with the small water first. Start off with your Smith, your Waters, Amicalola, some of those smaller stuff. And you'll learn how to stock fish better. You'll learn how to make those shorter, more accurate casts without doing all the crazy, casting and all that stuff. Start off slow, go with those. Learn to spot the fish with your eyes. Right. It's just being able to see the fish, extremely important, especially when it gets to the tougher times of the months, that would be, and then, for good anglers though, you can refine those same exact things on those same waters. So there's, a different challenge, because more times than not, unless you get there at, 3 p.m. and the fish have been beat up, most of those fish are catchable on any given day. Okay. There's very few that, won't bite a fly at least once at some point in the day.
Right. I know you are a guide here in North Georgia. You also have a website that you always do these reports on. So tell everybody what your website is and kind of describe your website, the information that you put on there.
So GeorgiaWildTrout.com is the website. We've got articles on a little bit of everything. So the same thing we're talking about here, I've got articles that flesh out, some of these creeks, rivers, delayed harvest in a little more detail, along with a lot of the other fisheries in Georgia, not in the wintertime. Right. So we've got something for everybody, whether you're starting out. There's kind of more beginning tactics articles, and then there's even some more in-depth ones, like we get into streamer fishing, sight fishing, a little bit of the more tougher techniques to pick up on
Yeah. So we'll have the link to Tad's website in the description below in this video. So listen, Tad, I think that's a pretty good little overview of all the delayed harvest. It's kind of an exciting time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys look forward to it, the fly anglers,
Yep.
especially with less crowds and all that.
Yep.
So I appreciate you coming down and just kind of giving us a preview of all the
Thank you
creeks.
thank you for having me. Good luck to all the anglers getting out there this winter. If you see me, come say hello.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and click that notification bell and have some fun on the water. Pick up a fly rod and go hit these delayed harvest streams.